Ready? Okay. Good morning. I'd like to bring the August 15, 2018 Planning Advisory Commission to order. The official start is 9 o'clock this morning. I would ask you all to turn off your cell phones or put them on vibrate this morning. First of all, we'll rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. I'd like to remind those that are in the audience and watching on TV, this is the first hearing of any rezoning case, text change, or special exception request brought before us today. We will first hear a reading of the staff report from Mr. Renfro for the case, and then we will ask the applicant to provide a brief overview of the request. We will then give the opportunity for anyone in the audience that would like to speak for or against the request or to inquire about said request. The commissioners will have any needed discussion on the case. Once a motion is made, seconded by the commission, a vote will take place and recommendation will be rendered. The case will go back to the planning department for their independent recommendation. If it is a favorable recommendation, then the case is forwarded on to the city council with two independent recommendations. If the planning department makes a recommendation for denial, the applicant will have 10 days from the receipt of a letter of the denial to notify the clerk of council that they are requesting to be placed on city council agenda. The City Council of Columbus will hold a public meeting, first reading is what it will be called. Said council will then consider the case, review the PAC findings and planning department recommendations, hear discussion on the matter. Council will then make a final decision at a second public meeting called the second reading. All right, commissioners, hope you all got a copy of the minutes from the August 1st meeting. Did everybody get a copy of that and have an opportunity to review it? I know there were some changes. Mr. Dudley, did you have a comment?
Oh, I had just suggested a change to Mr. Renfro. But,
okay, and you got those changes made, is that correct?
Yes, sir, that was updated.
Okay, very good. Are there any other changes? Okay, if none, we'll just consider the minutes accepted. Okay. All right. This brings us to our first case today, and the first case is a rezoning case, REZN 07181304. This is a request to rezone 15.25 acres of land located at 1600 Blanchard Boulevard. Current zoning is GC, which is general commercial. Proposed zoning is LMI, light manufacturing, industrial. The proposed use is bulk storage, non-flammable. Ernie Smallman is the applicant, and this property is located in Council District 7. And we'll hear from Mr. Renfro on the staff report first, please.
Yes, sir. The general land use is consistent with Planning Area C. Current land use designation is light manufacturing industrial. Future is light industrial. It is compatible with the existing land use. The property does lie within the floodway and floodplain. The developer will need an approved drainage plan prior to issuance of a site development permit if a permit is required. The property is serviced by all city services. The traffic impact would increase by 158 trips. The level of service would remain a B. Traffic engineering, this site shall meet the codes and regulations of the Columbus Consolidated Government for commercial usage. No school impact. There is buffer requirement category C. The three options would be 20 feet with a certain amount of canopy trees, understory trees, shrubs, ornamental grasses per 100 linear feet. 10 feet with a certain amount of shrub, ornamental grasses per 100 linear feet with a wood fence or masonry wall, 30 feet undisturbed natural buffer. No response for Fort Benning or DRI recommendation. 14, property owners within 300 feet of the subject properties were notified of the rezoning request. The planning department received no calls or emails regarding the rezoning. Additional information, this property is located in an AE zone and has to comply with the 2 feet above the base flood elevation if they do substantial improvements. Driveways and parking spaces have to comply for the new use.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Renfro. Commissioners, do you have any questions for the planning department this time? All right, and would you please state your name and your address and tell us what your plans are here, sir?
Ernie Smallman, my address is 7th Street in Columbus. We're just proposing to take the warehouse back to its original zoning to allow for traditional warehouse use.
Okay. So it says you're not storing anything flammable in there, but, I mean, what type of?
We're trying to leave it open. I mean, right now we've got a potential lease with a bulk storage user. It's just palletized material, and so they'd be bringing it in and out. But I mean, we don't have anything, flammable as far as combustibles.
Okay. All right, commissioners, do you have any questions? Mr. Smallman? All right, thank you, sir.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
That said, is there anyone in the audience like to speak for this case? Please come forward at this time. None taken. If there's anyone that would like to speak against this case, please come up to the podium at this time. All right, that's it. Commissioners, I open the floor for comments or a motion, please.
I'll make a
Mr.
motion.
Brannon?
In the case of REZN 0718-1304 at 1600 Blanchard Boulevard, I move approval of this request as it is compatible with existing land use and with the planning designation area.
All right, we have a motion to accept. Do we have a second? All right, second. Any discussion? All those in favor to accept this case, raise your right hand, and it's unanimous. Thank you. All right, we move to the second case here. REZN 0718-1340. This is a request to rezone 2 acres of land located at 435 21st Street. Current zoning is SFR3, which is Single Family Residential 3. Proposed zoning is RO Residential Office. The proposed use is multifamily, 85 units. Scott Henry is the applicant. This property is located in Council District 7, Woodson. And Mr. Renfro, we ask that you give us your staff report first, please.
Yes, sir. General land use is inconsistent for planning area D. Current land use designation is public, institutional, futures, office, professional. Compatible with existing land uses, yes. The property does not lie within the floodway and floodplain area. The developer will need an approved drainage plan prior to an issuance of a site development permit if a permit is required. The property is serviced by all city services. The traffic would increase by 565 trips per day, but would remain a level of service B. The site shall meet the codes and regulations of the Columbus Consolidated Government for commercial usage. There'll be no school impact, no buffer requirements, no response from Fort Benning or DRI recommendation. 87 property owners within 300 feet of the subject properties were notified of the rezoning. The planning department received 3 inquiries and calls and emails regarding the rezoning. In additional notes, the existing school will not be torn down.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Renfro. Commissioners, do you have any questions of Mr. Renfro regarding this case?
I've got
Mr.
a
Dudley?
couple. In the staff report, I believe it said that the average annual daily trips would increase by 220. And you're saying it's 565, actually?
Right, there was a typo, and that was my mistake on the back sheet you received for the traffic analysis form.
It is.
At the bottom, it says 565.
Okay. That neighborhood has a lot of very narrow streets, and there's also already a lot of on-street parking of cars. I assume the plan here will have enough parking for the cars associated with the development, but
It will, and it should, and then I'll let the developer speak to that when he gets up.
But would all the extra traffic cause special problems because the neighborhood is so narrow and there's already a lot of on-street parking?
I wouldn't say special problems. Anytime you have an additional traffic, it is something you have to factor in.
It's like one extra car a minute all day.
Right.
So that seems like a lot.
Does that answer your question?
Well, that's my point anyway, yeah.
Question of clarity, you said that
Mr.
the
Reed.
existing structure, which is like, I think, a two-story school, if I remember looking at it correctly.
Yes, sir.
That's gonna remain on site,
It is.
and it's gonna be incorporated into the plans?
It is.
Is that a historic building? Is it in a historic district?
No, sir.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Any other questions? All right, thank you. Are you here, I assume you're here to speak for the
Yes.
case. Would you give us your name and address, please, first?
My name is Scott Henry. I'm with Celadon Holdings. The address is 435 21st Street. I am the developer. I'm also joined by River City Construction and 2WR Architects, both local firms that are involved in this project. So we're housing developers. Our mission is to restore historic buildings and reposition them into housing. So the Rose Hill School, we find schools are perfect examples or asset types to be repositioned into housing. Rose Hill School is a perfect example of that. Our intent is to save the building and put it on the National Register with the National Park Service. We'll be partially financing the project by using equity that's generated from the historic tax credit that are generated for the project. Because it'll be a historic building on the National Register, we will be restoring the building to a historic standard. So we have no interest in tearing it down or altering the exterior. It'll be restored to the way it was when it was first built, with the important difference that there'll be apartments in the building instead of a school. In addition to restoring the existing structure, we'll be building a new building on the play lot area just to the east of the structure. It'll be a new building, I believe 3 stories. The architecture will be compatible with the existing building, but it won't be designed to match it. So it's really important when restoring these historic buildings that we complement the existing structure, but we don't copy it, so it's clearly a new building, but kind of fits in with the existing structure. In a moment, I'll ask Lee from 2WR to talk a bit about the site plan. Hopefully there was a site plan included in your packet, as well as a couple interior renderings to give you a sense for the quality of the units that we'll be building. But there'll be adequate parking on site. We also recognize that there are a number of buildings around our site that appear to be abandoned or on the verge of falling over, frankly. We'll be working with the city to identify the owners of those properties. We'd like to buy those properties and to the extent that they can't be saved, tear them down and either create some park space or additional parking to help mitigate some of the concerns that you raised. It'll be an $18 million investment in Columbus. We'll be hiring locally, and I'll be asking David from River City Contracting to talk a bit more about that in a moment. But we think it's a great opportunity to help stabilize the neighborhood with this project, save an important historic building, and bring some important economic development into the Columbus area. I guess with that, I would ask Lee from 2WR to talk a little bit about the project.
Lee, would you state your name and address for the record?
Lee Martin, 11 9th Street. We had the opportunity to explore this building, and it's a very rich historical building, very rich detailing, and we're proud to be a part of potentially saving this building. There are not too many schools of this age that are of this quality that can still be saved, and it's our hope that this is the economics can come together to make this happen. The site, part of the one thing I want to point out, I heard the traffic study, but this is also in an area where we expect this to be lower income housing. These are going to be people not necessarily with cars. There's a tremendous number of bus lines that cross this site. We do anticipate that the access to all the bus, you're less than a mile to the nearest major intersection of all the bus traffic. We feel that that's going to augment, and you're not going to have quite the traffic that you would have with a typical complex. It's our intent, as Scott mentioned, to develop the site in such a way that the new building complements the nature of what's around it, not replicating the historic building, but weaving its way into that area, that development, that neighborhood around it, being respectful of it. We're still early stages. There's still a lot of exploration and design decisions to be made, but I think this site has a unique opportunity to be redeveloped in a way that's very supportive of the city and gives us a chance to preserve a nice piece of history in Columbus.
Commissioners, you have any questions of Mr. Martin?
Mr. Martin, I just noticed while in the area that is very close to Rose Hill Baptist Church, have you guys had any conversations with them in regards to the impact that it's going to have on their facilities in that area?
No, we have not.
Is that something you plan to do?
Yeah, definitely. We've spoken to a number of the residents in the area that have called me, but you know, we would value the opportunity to talk to everybody in the area. I think our ultimate intent would be to hold a community meeting in the area and invite everybody to weigh in on the project.
Okay, any other questions? Yes, sir, Mr. Manager.
For the new facility that's going in, is the roof line going to exceed the roof line of the existing school?
I don't think so.
We'll be very close. We may be a little higher, but I don't really think the floor-to-floor heights on that existing school are pretty substantial. We're not talking about a 3 or 4 story difference in height. We're talking about pretty close in the neighborhood of the building height.
So close being what?
We're probably within, with the pitch of that roof, we're probably within 10 feet of the height.
Okay,
of the
thank you.
building.
All right.
Thank
Any other
you, Lee, and-
questions? I'm sorry?
Oh, I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
Oh, I didn't mean to intervene. If there are any other questions, I
No, I was
wanted.
going
Yeah,
to say, Mr.
one more
Reese.
question to clarity.
Yes.
I'm sorry, Mr.
Sure.
Chairman.
No, you're fine.
But we talked earlier about the parking accommodations, and I heard your explanation about this being low income, but, you know, I think it would be wrong to make an assumption that low-income individuals may not have vehicles. So considering that there are 1 or 2 vehicles per unit, will there be enough parking to accommodate them on site and not impact the narrow streets that have been identified?
So I didn't say that, just to be clear.
Okay.
I didn't say anything about low income and parking.
So who was talking about the parking? Was it you?
I mentioned it.
Oh, okay, I'm sorry. Well, can you come forward then? Because I just want to make sure I'm not making things up this morning. I don't want,
Sorry.
And I have
I know I had a little bit too much sugar in my coffee, but I don't.
I have a strong opinion about this topic, so,
Uh-huh.
but Lee, go ahead and answer, and then I'll chime in.
Just as a general note, from what we've seen with other housing developments that, in Ashley Station and others, that you don't have quite the same traffic load, vehicle load that you have in other higher market developments. I do think that what's unique about this, and it kind of embraces, urban planning, is that it's not only near one bus stop, it's near multiple bus stops going in multiple directions, which supports living in an urban way, walking and taking a bus versus having to drive everywhere.
Well, you know,
Hey, sir,
part
if
of
you
what
get
we
closer
have
to
to
the
take
mic.
into consideration is things like public safety and the fire trucks being able to get down the street.
Sure.
And when you have a lot of cars on the road, that could create complications. I just basically just wanted to know, would there be enough parking there to at least accommodate 1 car per unit?
Our intent is to get as much of that parking, yes, and to get as much of that parking on site, not on the street. We're anticipating, that's
So at
our
least
effort.
1 parking space per unit
That's what we're
on
anticipating
site?
being able to do.
That's what you're anticipating, okay.
All right.
And
Yes,
if you
sir.
don't mind, I'd like to add to that. Whether folks are low income or high income or whatever, it doesn't really dictate how many cars they have. You know, we're catering to folks, we're families here, and there's going to be 3-bedroom units. There will likely be folks with 2 cars, so we want to make sure that we're accommodating folks. We're not saying that low-income folks don't have cars. It's not what we're saying at all. To the contrary, we're catering to families. They're going to have cars. We will meet the zoning requirement that we're seeking for parking, but we recognize that there could be more cars than that particular requirement. That's why we are going to work actively with the city to identify the owners, if there are owners of these other houses in the area that are dilapidated and abandoned, to buy them and create additional parking to help make sure we're addressing all those concerns. That said, there are lots of bus stops in the area. We're walking, a mile away from the bus hub. So there's all kinds of transportation options for folks, but we want to make sure that we are catering to our tenants and making sure they have a place to park.
Thank you, Mr. Henry. All right, did you have someone else that you wanted to come up and speak? Did you mention Mr. Humphreys?
We asked, actually, Patrick, hiring locally, these are important projects. The community has to benefit. We feel that we need to hire locally, and we really wanted to have the contractor talk about, Celadon has told the contractor it's important to us that we hire locally and make sure the money benefits local companies. So River City is going to speak to that.
Okay. If y'all would come forward, please, and give your name and address, please, for the record.
Patrick Spinks, River City Contracting, 76 Goat Rock Road. Like Mr. Henry said, he's been very concerned and appreciative of looking locally for his contractor, his architect, and expressed that same interest in us to make sure from a subcontractor standpoint and vendor standpoint that we do the same thing. Right now, obviously the benefits of revamping that area, contributing to the architecture of the building and the new addition that's going with it. Outside of that, it's important for us to make sure that we're hiring local and creating the economic benefit of it. Right now, with everything we've got going on, we're at about 95% local participation with subcontractors and vendors. We anticipate doing that same thing with this job, if not trying to set a goal of 100%. Overall impact to the construction industry locally could be anywhere between $12 and $15 million, and we anticipate probably 150 to 200 local employees being employed on this job during the course of it.
Okay. Any questions, commissioners? Thank you, sir. All right. That said, anyone in the audience like to come forward and speak for this case, please come forward now and state your name and address for the record, please.
Good morning, Dave Goldberg. I'm the Chief Operations Officer for the school system. Currently, this is a school system property, and the sale of this property is pending this zoning hearing. I just wanted to assure this council that our Board of Education has been informed about this whole situation. They've seen the site plans and the development plans, and they are in support of this project.
All right. Thank you, sir. Any questions? Does anyone else like to speak for this case? Please come forward at this time. Is it?
I have a question.
Please come to the podium and name and address, please.
Hi, good morning. My name is Erin Boothalier, and I have a business diagonal from Rose Hill School. And we've been there about 12, 13 years. We're optimistically hopeful that this could be a good fit with our neighborhood. Just kind of, concerned, or at least like to make sure it was addressed regarding traffic, on-road parking. I mean, as it's shown now, there's not sufficient parking on site, and there's some driveway alignment issues and things that we just want to kind of address as we go through the process. We're interested, I'm glad to hear that the second building was going to be at least compatible with the area. There are a lot of older buildings in that area, and it really adds to the charm of the neighborhood. Safety, not just from a fire truck and ambulance standpoint, but just in terms of the neighborhood, we've had kind of off and on problems with, the people that are coming to live in this new facility. We're kind of interested in hearing what type of HUD housing it might be, or how that funding comes around, and what type of neighbors we'll have. And we're also, I was also interested in knowing whether there was any sort of fencing proposed, or any sort of landscaping and buffers improvements, or anything improved. We certainly look forward to having a new neighbor. We certainly look forward to having good, responsible neighbors, and, you know, certainly would support that. We just want to have our voices heard regarding traffic and safety in the neighborhood.
All right, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Is anyone in the audience like to speak against this case? Please come forward at this time. Please come to the podium and state your name and address, please.
My name is Mary Knowles, and we own property right across from the school. In fact, I taught at that school there, and I'm so excited about seeing this happen. The thing that bothered me is he was talking about the landowners working with the council for the owners across. And we're not really interested in selling our property across at this time. So I just want to make sure that the property cannot be taken by public domain or anything like that, that they have to have permission to buy the property from us. So I just want to make sure that we have our rights to keep our property in case they need more parking area, because it's right across from the school.
I believe your rights are intact. Mr. Henry, would you want to address that? Or
I'm sorry, I can't hear you.
I'm sorry. I believe your rights are intact. Mr. Henry will address that to you if you'll let him come up forward.
Okay.
And hopefully he'll put that to rest for you.
Thank you for the question. We wouldn't be interested in taking or buying occupied homes. So we want to be a good neighbor. We're interested in helping to stabilize the neighborhood by purchasing properties that have been abandoned that may or may not even be owned by somebody. You know, those properties that I'm thinking of cannot be rebuilt. They probably should be demolished anyways, and people are not living in them. So those are the types of properties I'd be interested in, not yours. I want to be a good neighbor.
All right, thank you. Did you want to address any of the neighbors' questions that owns the business?
Certainly. I think a lot of the issues that she raised, I share those issues. We want to stabilize the neighborhood along the lines that I've just spoke about with the abandoned properties that are nearby. Security is important to us as well. We can have Lee come up and talk a little bit about the site plan and some of the buffers and fencing that we have planned. We'll have controlled access. We'll have landscaping that is designed in a way that there are not hiding spots for folks that shouldn't be around. We'll have adequate lighting, cameras, and like I said, controlled access. This is not a HUD building. This will not be public housing. We will be possibly financing the project with some low-income housing tax credits, but the income targeting that we would be catering to would be more the 60 to 80% AMI range, not the public housing range, which is far lower than that. These are folks that are working. They're teachers, they're cops, they're working in restaurants as waitresses and cooks. These are working folks. I may be forgetting some of the questions, but I think we share a lot of the same concerns.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Bollinger has a follow-up question.
If you would, please, I'm sorry. And I know that your site plan is just a rendering, but I still have a concern, following up on Mr. Reese, that there are not enough parking spaces in your rendering to even have one car per apartment. And then also, if you would, you talked about lighting. Would there be any bleed over? Are you going to design that lighting so that it does not bleed into other properties or surrounding that?
So with all of our properties, our policy is to not exceed 1 foot candle at the property line. So the intent is to not shine light on our neighbors.
Okay.
So the lighting is sort of down lighting,
Okay.
and will illuminate the area immediately around the building, but not spill over.
Okay.
In regards to the site plan, we just recently got a plat of survey to really accurately define the site. The next generation of site plan, I think, once you see it, it'll look a little bit better. That is a very preliminary layout.
Okay.
All right,
Thank you.
thank you. All right, any other discussion? Anyone else in the audience? All right, that said, Commissioners, open the floor up for a motion. Mr. Reese?
As it relates to matter REZN 07181340, request to rezone 2 acres of land located at 435 21st Street, currently zoned single-family residential 3, proposed zone residential office, and being that it's compatible with all of the local requirements, I move that we approve the request.
All right, we have a motion to approve. Do we have a second? Mr. Greenblatt? Any discussion? All those in favor to approve this case, raise your right hand. And it's unanimous. Thank you. All right. Our next case, and last case, REZN 07181358. This is a request to rezone 0.43 acres of land located at 1504 17th Street. Current zoning is RMF 1. Excuse me, y'all can speak outside. We'd appreciate it. Ladies and gentlemen. All right. Current zoning is RMF 1, residential multifamily 1. Proposed zoning is historic, HIST. Proposed use is residential and florist. David Benefield is the applicant. Property is located in Council District 7, Woodson. Mr. Renfro, we'll hear from you for the staff report, please.
Yes, sir. General land use. Residential is consistent. Florist is inconsistent. Plan in Area D. Current land use is single-family residential. Future is single-family. It is compatible with the existing land uses. The property does not lie within the floodway or floodplain area. The developer will need an approved drainage plan prior to issuance of a site development permit if a permit is required. Property is serviced by all city services. The amount of trips generated daily will increase by 45. The level of service will remain a B. The site shall meet the codes and regulations of the Columbus Consolidated Government for a live-work unit usage. There'll be no school impact, no buffer requirement, no response for Fort Benning recommendation or DRI recommendation. 59 property owners within 300 feet of the subject's properties were notified of the zoning request. The planning department received 2 calls approving this rezoning, and there was no additional information.
All right, thank you. Commissioners, you have any, Mr. Dudley?
Yes, I see that the applicant originally had requested neighborhood commercial zoning, and then that was changed, I assume after consultation with the city, to requesting historic zoning. And I wonder if you could explain the implications of that, because at first glance, it seemed more like a neighborhood commercial than historic. I don't know that anything else in that area is historic, and historic would require review by the Board of Historic and Architectural Review, I think.
Right.
Good morning, Will Johnson, Planning Department. Mr. Dudley, Highland Hall is on the National Register as a landmark property, so it is already subject to the BHAR. Because it is a landmark property, the HIST zoning qualifies for that location as a live-work. NC, before we spoke with the applicants, the sign went up as neighborhood commercial, but neighborhood commercial would not allow the live portion of the live work. It would just have to be a commercial entity.
Question, Mr. Dudley? Okay. Any other questions of planning? All right. Who's here to talk about the case? If you would, please state your name and address.
I'm Mark McCollum. My address is 765 Ray Drive here in Columbus, Georgia. I'm here representing the applicant, Mr. David Benefield. Mr. Benefield is with us this morning if the committee has questions for him. We are requesting the rezoning of the property located at 1504 17th Street. It is currently, as was mentioned in the staff report, a residential property. Mr. Benefield is currently the owner of Ann's Porch, which is a local florist there on Girard Street in St. Elmo Shopping Center. He is looking to relocate his business to this property and is asking for a change of rezoning in order to do so. He also will occupy the property as his residence. So it will be an owner-occupied property as well.
Okay. Any questions of Mr. McCollum?
How old is this structure?
It was built in 1857.
So it's
The
definitely
national-
historic.
Mr. Johnson mentioned it was built in, he mentioned that it is on the National Register of Historic Places. It is also part of a National Register Historic District as well. So the two are together as a historic property and a historic area.
I noticed they've already started undergoing some renovations to it.
Yes, the property has been used lately as rental, needed a little updating. Paint has been going on. Hopefully some new landscaping will be happening pretty soon. Some tree trimming, that sort of thing is all that's been taking place. There are no plans, of course, to change any of the exterior of the property other than landscaping. So there'll be no changes to the exterior of the property. If there are any, at some future point, of course, it will go to the Board of Historic and Architectural Review, as is required.
Right. Can you help us understand how he's going to operate his business there?
Yes, I mean, he has a storefront located at St. Elmo Shopping Center. He plans to move there and use the front part of the property of the house as his business. He will have some customers coming to that location. The vast majority of his business, as with a lot of businesses these days, is by telephone. People call in orders, so there's very limited foot traffic that comes to that property. But he will be operating out of it as his storefront or as his business retail location.
Okay. All right. Any other questions, commissioners?
And I just want to be clear that you guys have already spoken to code and inspections and got the
Yes, we have.
clearance
We submitted the application for the rezoning, of course, and as part of that process to keep things moving so that the business relocates in a timely manner. We've had codes and inspections come up, go through the property, make sure it's appropriate. I think Mr. Johnson mentioned the need for compatibility with the zoning request for it to be livable, and there's enough separation and that sort of thing, and adequate space for living as well as for the business to run. And there
Excellent.
is. It's been signed off on in that capacity.
Okay. Mr. Bollinger? Oh, I'm sorry, Mr. Davis.
I noticed where that property is, the street that comes out to 17th Street, I
Yes.
think, if I'm not mistaken.
That's right.
It's a real awkward connection to 17th Street. And I just wonder if you are going to make a business out of it, how is that going to affect the traffic right there at that little funny intersection?
We don't anticipate any traffic impact. Again, the average customers going to that property on a daily basis are 6 to 8 customers per day on average. And so we don't expect any traffic increases as far as affecting the current existing traffic flow by any means. So it should be very limited. There is off-street parking at that facility. So again, his customers can pull off into a designated parking space. It's an adjacent lot that is owned by Mr. Benefield. That's part of that house, part of that business. And so they can pull off and and not actually park on the street if they choose to.
Correct me if I'm wrong, one time this was like an art studio or art.
Yes, it was. It was owned by a local artist
Yes.
who had a art restoration business, and she is Gloria Manny was the former owner.
Prior owner.
She is also a local artist herself, as well as restoration. She ran her business out of there years ago. It's been several years. She's now down at the shopping center at St. Elmo as well.
Okay. Any other questions? All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Is there anyone in the audience like to speak for this case? Please come forward.
Elizabeth Barker, 1328 Elmwood Drive. I'm also the Executive Director of Historic Columbus, and I just wanted to make a statement of support. We have been working with the property owner, David Benefield, as well as the Planning Department, and are in support of this zoning change and feel that it is appropriate for the proposed use of the property as well as for the future of the property after David is no longer there.
Okay, thank you very much. Any questions or comments? Anybody else? Is anyone in the audience like to speak against this case? Please come forward. And there's not many left out there, so with that said, I'd like to say, does anyone have a motion for this case? Mr. Greenblatt.
Yes, regarding case REZN 07181358, applicant David Benefield, location 1504 17th Street, approximately 0.43 acres. Current zoning RMF1, proposed is HIST historic. While the residential may be consistent and the florist is not consistent, it is compatible with existing land uses. I move that we approve.
All right, we have a motion. Do we have a second? Mr. Bollinger? Any discussion? All in favor, raise your right hand. All opposed by the same sign, and it is affirmative. Okay, that completes our cases for today. Is there any new business or anything we need to bring up?
No, sir.
All right. That said, I'd like to call this meeting adjourned. Thank you.